I'm a 24-year-old woman from Tennessee. My parents always beat into my head the idea of stranger danger and always told me never to pick anyone up off the street for any reason. It was around March or April of 2020 when the lockdowns really started to hit my city due to the pandemic. I had taken leave from work for a medical condition, and my husband worked the second shift, so on nights when boredom was getting the best of me, I'd set out on a nice drive with my music blaring. I prefer driving the back roads, as there are no cops, and I like to go fast. I know it's dumb, but hey, cars and going fast are just in my blood. Anyway, I went on this back road that my aunt happens to live on. It's about midnight, and as I'm driving down this road, I see a woman waving her flashlight and running toward my car. Keep in mind, I'm stupidly going 60 miles per hour in a 40-mile-per-hour zone. I hurried and slammed on my brakes, barely missing this skinny, tiny woman. I rolled down my window to check on her, and she's panicking. She asked me to give her a ride to the Pilot gas station. It was only a 2-minute drive from where we were. At first, I told her no, I could not do this. I didn't know her. She kept begging me and said her boyfriend had beaten her up and kicked her out. She also had this big purse, and when I kept declining, she dumped her purse onto the road and said, "Look, I have no weapons or drugs. I just need a ride to the Pilot, please." And me, being the supporter of women, obviously, because I am one, and being a survivor of domestic abuse myself, I stupidly agreed to let her in my car. I told her, "I can call the police for you." And she said they've already been called. And I said, "Well, then shouldn't you be waiting for them? If we leave, they won't find you to help you." As I'm saying that, I see a police officer drive by real slow while glaring into my car. Oh, there's the cop. Now let me turn around and get his attention. He can help you. At this point, she is glaring at me with the evilest eyes and grabbed me by the arm and said through her toothless mouth, "If you turn around, I'll get my boys to hurt you." That is the moment I realized I had made a huge mistake by stopping. I should mention that when I stopped and saw this woman on the street, I couldn't see that she didn't have teeth and was an addict. It wasn't until she got closer to me that I noticed it. She didn't know that I carry a knife in my door, and I was ready to use it if needed. I was definitely well prepared for the situation. I kept driving to the Pilot, and we're about 30 seconds away when she tells me, "Not this Pilot, take me to the next one, the town over," at which point I said, "No, I'm taking you to this Pilot. It's what we agreed on." And I hurried in front of the Pilot doors. I looked at them and firmly said, angrily, "Get out of my car. Get out." She said, "You can't do this to me, please. He'll find me." And I yelled again, "I don't care, get out, or I'm going to stab you." She opened the door. As she's climbing out, I throw her purse at her. She shuts the door and yells that I'm some sort of C-word or whatever you can imagine. And I rolled down my window and yelled, "Oh, you're the junkie." And I hightailed it out of there. I called 911 to report what had just happened, and they said they already had police in the area looking for her. I was halfway down the road when everything really set in. The shakes finally got to me, and I had a panic attack. That was the scariest 2-minute drive of my life. I got home, and when my husband came home, I told him everything. We called Pilot shortly after my 911 call, and they told us the girl was arrested, and they found a blanket inside her purse with all kinds of drugs rolled up into it. Do you all remember her dumping everything into the road and claiming she had nothing on her in front of me? The blanket didn't fall out. I had no idea it was even in there. I was relieved she had been arrested, honestly. However, I was terrified that she did have boys to hurt me. She knew what I drove. My car wasn't your average car. Mine is modded with bright metallic red wheels, metallic red accents, a big purple dual exhaust, and other mods. But the other ones aren't visible, they're under the hood. Also, there are not many people in my city who own this car or model. There aren't many people in my city in general. I'm not even sure why they classify it as a city, as we only have about 1,200 people who live here. That's right, 1,200. Anyways, I learned my lesson from this, and I will never pick up anybody else. I've never told anyone this story, except my husband and my best friend. I feel stupid for ignoring my gut. So, my name is Colton, and I'm a regular guy from a regular small town, and I'm a family man. The year is 2020, and it's March. The entire nation was going through a very unusual, odd, and what could be characterized as downright scary time. I doubt that I need to explain what I'm talking about. I will just say that the word lockdown is no longer a term used just for prisons, even though that's kind of what it felt like at times. My story starts maybe 10 days into the initial lockdown. Let me start by saying that I live in a very conservative state. We have very few restrictions on firearms or your ability to use them. Our state has what is commonly referred to as the castle doctrine, which, in a nutshell, means if you are on my property and I deem you a threat, I am within my rights to use deadly force to protect myself, my family, or my property. I will also mention that we have one of the lowest violent crime rates in the nation, which is why I choose to raise my family here. The reason that I mention this before anything else is to emphasize the feeling of safety I have felt here my entire life. Not feeling safe in my home or even in my own town has never crossed my mind, that is, until about 3 weeks ago. So, it was a Friday night. I would say that it was any normal Friday night, but that was not the case. After 9 p.m., there is nothing, and I mean nothing, not a car, not a bike, not a person. Heck, no noise at all. It's like The Walking Dead minus the zombies. This night, we had broken out the board games, and Clue was the decided upon game. About 25 minutes into the game, my 16-year-old son bumps my shoulder and asks, "Hey, Pop, did you hear that?" I replied, "Hear what, son?" He said that he heard something like a tapping sound. But between me, him, his 2 sisters, and his mom, there was quite a bit of talking and laughing going on. Our house is 2 stories. The family area is on the basement level, which is where we were. Upstairs is the front door and the entry of 3 bedrooms. Maybe 5 minutes later, I hear the same sound that my son was talking about. He says, "See, Dad, look. There it is again." I told him that this time I heard it too, and that I would go up and have a look. I went up the stairs and started towards the front door when I heard a very loud knock. It was more like a pounding than anything, and it was coming from the front door. So, I decided to go check it out. I stopped in my tracks for a few seconds as I noticed the upstairs lights were off and it was quite dark, even though I know I left them on before I went downstairs. I decided to peek through my blinds to see who was there. My front porch light was tripped, so I knew something had to be there, but I could see absolutely nothing. I do have a security system that has a front door camera, so I retreated downstairs and grabbed my tablet to have a look at what triggered my light and pounded on my door. I went back 10 minutes to about the time my son heard the first noise, fully expecting to see some kids messing around. The light came on and the camera recorded the tapping sound, but there was absolutely nothing visually there. The light goes off after 60 seconds of no movement. A few minutes later, the light again comes on, and the system again recorded the tapping, but still, there was nothing there. 3 minutes later, the system is once again activated, and this time, the pounding is happening again and again, but there is again nothing visually there to clue me in as to what is happening. I thought maybe there was an issue with the video, so I activated all 6 cameras and ran a diagnostic. Everything was seemingly running perfectly. My son asked me if he could try something. I said, "Sure," and handed the tablet over. He reminded me that these cameras do have a night vision capability. He rewound the video and then put on the night vision setting. 2 seconds before the light came on, the camera caught a disturbing image. It was a shape that was kind of transparent and moved without touching the ground, as if it was floating. It moved very quickly and very suddenly. It covered my 50-foot front walkway in about 2 seconds. My son asked me, "Seriously, Dad, what is that?" I told him I had no idea and took the tablet from him and started forwarding it to see the second tapping noise. Now, once the light comes on, the night vision feature no longer works, but once the light goes off, the feature works again automatically. As I'm forwarding the video, the light goes off, and to my amazement, the thing is still there at the door. It is standing still. Then, after 3 minutes or so, the light trips on, and you hear the tapping once again, but nothing appears on the camera. After 60 seconds pass, the light goes off, and sure enough, whatever it is still there again. It is as still as a statue. Another 4 minutes go by, and the light comes on, and the pounding is heard once more. I waited the 60 seconds, and when the light goes off, the thing is not there anymore. I then activated all 6 cameras on the live feed and pinned on the night vision setting. I almost dropped the tablet. There, in the backyard looking through a window, is that thing. By this time, my whole family was looking at the screen. When all of us realized the window this thing was looking through was right in front of us, the girls were agitated and scared, and I'm going to be honest, I was a bit worried too. I've never experienced or seen anything like this outside of a horror movie. I gave the tablet to my son and told him to keep an eye on it and let me know if that thing moves. I went to the closet, grabbed my Benelli 12-gauge shotgun, and headed to the back door, with my son close behind. I asked, "Is it still there, son?" He replied, "Yeah." I told him to disengage the auto feature on the security light so that when I opened the door, the lights wouldn't come on. I quickly opened the door, stepped outside, and looked out the left of my window. My son said, "Dad, it's looking at you." I yelled, "Who are you, and what do you want?" "It's moving toward us, Dad." Now, I'm not crazy. When I realized I couldn't see this thing with my own eyes, I wasn't going to fire my weapon indiscriminately with no visible target. I stepped back inside and closed and locked the door. "It's at the door," he said. My wife is now down the hall asking, "What in the hell is going on?" All I could say is that I had no clue. Then, once again, there was tapping on the door. At this point, all I could do was muster a very weak and probably not very intimidating, "You are trespassing. Leave now." Then the automatic security lights come on, all of them. I whispered to my son, "I thought you turned those off." He replied that he did, and that the setting was still off, yet all of them stayed on for quite a few minutes. When the lights finally turned off, the thing was no longer at the door. None of the cameras could see it, and it was apparently gone. All 5 of us stayed up all night watching the cameras. Once the sun came up and my girls went to sleep on the couch, the rest of us couldn't manage to do the same. We just sat there talking and wondering, rewatching that same 25 minutes of video feed over and over. I was only about 12 years old and in the 7th grade at the time. I should also mention that my school was across the street from the elementary school. My town had a population of just over 1,000 people, enough to have a school district, but not enough to have very packed schools. It was the day before winter break, and it was snowing lightly outside. I was in my 8th period class, which was algebra. My teacher let us have free time since we had already completed all of our exams for the semester. Given that this was the last period before winter break, they allowed us to relax a little. My classmates and I were having a good time, doing whatever we wanted, when the principal's voice suddenly came over the loudspeaker, "We're going on a red lockdown." I repeat, this is not a drill. This is not a drill. My teacher and classmates started freaking out because a red lockdown means that an intruder has gained access to the building and has a gun. My teacher quickly shushed us, ushered us into the corner, locked the door, and told us to be as quiet as possible. Then, she broke down crying. Through her tears, she told us that the elementary school across the street was also on lockdown and that some of the kids were injured because the shooter had entered there first. He had injured more than 20 kids and teachers before coming to the middle school. I shivered in fear and terror when I heard this and prayed that the intruder would not find us, hurt us, or kill anyone in the building. That's when I heard a deep voice say, "Open up." The intruder tried to open the door by turning the knob and then by smashing against it with his body weight, but to no avail. I should probably also mention that the windows on every classroom door are bulletproof. Anyway, after his failed attempts to break in, the intruder tried to shoot the window. Thankfully, it was bulletproof, and the bullets had no effect. I heard him grunt in anger before marching down the hall to the next classroom door. A couple of minutes later, a SWAT team and police officers came and opened our door, escorting us out of the building. They were able to track the intruder down in the school by following his snowy footprints. It was chilling to the bone outside, but thankfully, they ended up capturing that guy, getting him out of there, and sending him to prison. As they led him away, he gave us all stares of anger and malice. I know that at that moment, it wasn't the cold weather causing me to shiver, it was him. My parents ended up picking me up, crying profusely. My small town was devastated by the attack, and a website with donations was set up for the 20 victims. Thankfully, all 20 victims are alive and well today. But there is one question that nags at me to this very day: what would have happened if that man had been able to get inside our classroom? That thought always haunts me. This happened roughly 7 years ago, so bear with me if my memories are a little foggy. I moved around a lot as a kid and ended up going to 3 different elementary schools. At my favorite school, in a super small town, all the kids would claim it was haunted. I've always been a big skeptic. Even back then, I knew it wasn't true, until something happened to me. I should explain a little bit about my school. They did some interesting things there. If we were doing exceptionally well in class, a teacher would give us a slip of paper called a high five. We got to save them up, and at the end of the month, there would be a little store full of dollar store toys and such. I still have a bracelet I got from one of those. One day, my class was out at recess, and one of the recess monitors gave me a high five slip. I don't remember what for, but that's not important. I asked my teacher if I could go inside and put my slip away in my desk. She said it was okay, so I headed in. My classroom was super dark and just plain creepy to a 3rd grader. I sat in the back, so I had to walk all the way to my desk. As I slipped my high five into my desk, I suddenly felt my arms go numb. I had this strange feeling like something was watching me. It felt like someone was poking me with a safety pin on my neck. I was completely alone in that classroom, not even our teacher was there. This was the start of our little paranormal club that I hosted for the rest of the year. We had shadow figure sightings, haunted bathroom stall sightings, and just about everything you could think of. Heck, one of my classmates even saw red glowing eyes from under the stairs. At that point, everything was a conspiracy. We even had a giant tree fall over in a storm, so naturally, my little crew and I checked it out and blamed it on some evil spirit or something. I could go on and on with our little kid tales, but I'll just say there were a lot of creepy things that happened in that little town.